intellectual degree that, well, I should do something about it. That's crazy. What are we doing hitting kids? Let alone with a wooden board that was used by slave owners. And in our court system, it is an instrument deemed already a deadly weapon. Mm-hmm. Why are we still doing that? And here we're entering 2020, and this happens, according to statistics, every 20 seconds in our schools where this is allowed. And one of the most amazing things that I found was fairly recently, this is less than a year ago, kids in the state of Arkansas went to protest. They were protesting about the schools and how unsafe they are, and they're afraid to go to schools because of guns. And there was this high school in the state of Arkansas, one of the pupil-beating states, where these high school kids printed up signs. They were marching. They wanted safe schools. And they left school without permission, a whole gang of them. And when they returned to school, they were beaten with a wooden board for fighting against the use of the deadly weapon of a gun being, entering their school. Most kids don't even realize, with the students who live in states where they're being beaten, they think this is happening all over the country. When I have spoken to kids who live in communities where teachers are beating them, they don't realize that this is unique to 19 U.S. states and most of our U.S. territories. In our campaign, we've helped have it banned on the first island of St. Thomas. So it's not in the island of St. Thomas. That's the first one. And there are a few other of our U.S. territories that have legislation, but there's no voice behind. But these kids who march, they were beaten with a deadly weapon for fighting against deadly weapons being an issue in their community, in their schools. High school kids.
The United Nations, recently came out with the epidemic of police violence, speaking out about police violence. And I know that there's a heavier presence now, a police presence in our schools now. What sort of evolution have you seen over the the span of your career, as far as not just the violence with the teachers, but also having the environment's changed, the times have changed over the 40 years, I'm sure. But what would you say that this has helped or hindered, or would you say that it's more violent?
Would you say, so you mean, is my perspective that schools have become more safe since I started teaching? Is that what you're asking?
More safe with police presence?
Something, I strongly disagree with that. This is a very challenging question, because the average person thinks that our police force is nice and clean. Mm-hmm. And there are good police officers. I have two brothers who are officers, and they wouldn't hurt a fly. Okay, but there is so much corruption in our country, and of course worldwide. But with America being like the flagship nation, we have so much corruption that allows a lot of corruption to go on in other nations. Like I said, there are a few nations that refuse to ban beating their kids until, and they always tell you straight up, we're not banning until the U.S., because the USA is the example of what's right. So when you have that kind of attitude and you have police officers in our schools, it almost sets the pace. It sets a statement of, things are so bad, we need police officers in our schools now. That's what we need to keep them safe. And I strongly disagree. I actually am concerned even in the way in which our schools, especially our elementary schools, are, where they're locked down. I mean, if you have a little child in an elementary school, many of them are now at a point where the door is locked. Mom is locked out. Mom has to be buzzed into that school. And my concern is that there is so much corruption. The fact that our leaders, from John Klein's position, he was the U.S. State Education Committee chairman. And here we have this man who will make $174,000 for the rest of his life, who walked out allowing our kids to still be beaten. And the average person, it's really sad that people, I mean, we want to think our police officers are good. And I would imagine that the majority of them are. I really do. But if you have thousands of police officers and 10% are bad, you already have 100 right there that are not good. Mm-hmm. And with our government, I mean, if people are still thinking that our government is for the people and even by the people and working for the people, I mean, all you have to do is look out your window, look up at the skies, look at the X's, the chemtrails. There are so many things being allowed by a system that is sending our police officers into the schools. Now, I work in the school now, and we have police officers in the school, and they're very friendly. I like them. Hey, good morning. How are you, Officer so-and-so? But does that mean my school is safe? Does that mean I'm safe? Does that mean that a police officer in a school where our children, their parents are locked out, the kids cannot even leave the school, the parents cannot go in the school unless the school opens that door, lets the child out or lets the parent in? And we are becoming so corrupt on every front that to me is alarming. That is alarming. If my daughter she's an adult woman, okay, she's an adult, but if I had her in the school today and I could not walk in there at my will, I'd be very concerned about that. And a lot of us feel like, my kid is safe. He's in there. He's locked in there. Well, it's kind of scary to think that if he's locked in there and somebody calls CPS on you and says you were smoking marijuana last night and CPS found out and they're going to take your child because you're going to corrupt your child because you smoke marijuana, well, guess what? You may not even be able to walk in there and say, you know what, let me get my kid out of here. I got a call from CPS. So these are the conditions going on all around us. And that's why I say there are very few places where I'm finding purity at heart for our children, for our nation. I'm talking from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top. Mm-hmm. It is a scary thing right now. And I don't mind speaking out on it at all because this is our future. And if we're going to continue to be the 18-plus population, knowing these things are going on and saying nothing about it, we're part of the problem. It's like that saying goes, silence is consent. We have prisons in Los Angeles where the inmates are addicted to cocaine and heroin. How is that happening if corruption isn't running amok?
Exactly.
Everywhere.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very, very concerned.
Well, and it's concerning. I recently I had to give a reverse Miranda to a concerned mother that contacted me, worried that CPS was going to take her children from school or question them without her consent. Yeah.
Right.
Or having an attorney present. And whenever CPS gets involved and children are removed, they become custody of the state. They become a ward of the state.
Right.
So, they deserve to have, a parent or attorney present if they're going to be questioned in the schools. But a lot of times parents aren't even made aware.
Yes, that's true. And sometimes our children are being approached in a way where there's a lot of camouflaging going on. So they, the nice person coming in, so how's your mom? Oh, did you ever get hit? oh well, why did she hit you? Or what does she do when she thinks you're being naughty? And little children are innocent. They have no idea that this adult who's speaking to them somewhere on school grounds, a place where they're sent by their loving parent, that there could be people who are dressed up in nice dresses or suits who aren't very nice. They're going after them. And so the one of the things that I'm most concerned about is, just the level of silence that is just so pervasive upon this issue. We are sending out that message that, you know what, I'm just going to worry about my child. I read the Bible. I love learning through the Bible. And there is a scripture in there that says, protect the children. Now, if it said protect your children, good. You're in compliance with, God's will that he's saying, protect your child. But it says protect the children. And that's a charge to us that we're not just thinking about our child, we're thinking about all children. And the thing, too, is that the other thing that makes me so sad is that to be selfish to a point where we know kids are being beaten. We know there's a federal bill, not just a state bill. There are several state bills. There's a state bill in Texas right now to have pupil beatings banned in that state. And there's a bill in Kansas. There's a bill in Arizona. There's a bill in Colorado. There are a number of bills available right now just to ban this. And the only reason why they're just sitting, languishing on somebody's desk is because of the silence. Now, if a child who is beaten becomes that violent person that such training may produce in them, and then that child hurts somebody's child, now they're, maybe that child's now an adult, but he's being created into this violent person, this person who learned from their own teacher to solve their problems, to approach their problems through violence. I don't like what you did, so I'm going to beat you. So now that child is an adult. I don't like what this person did, so I'm going to hit that person. Be it with a bullet, be it with a fist, be it with whatever they decide. It doesn't matter. The mind doesn't say, oh, well, I got hit with a hand. Well, I got hit with a wooden board. I'm only going to hit like that. No, I will hit with a bomb. I will hit with my fist. I will hit with anything. And when that happens to that other child out there that was protected, then that child who harmed the other becomes an animal. Yet we allow that child to be abused to the point where he does exactly what any psychologist would say. He's just acting out what he learned in his or her childhood. And that to me is really sad, because we'll call that person a savage. We'll say string him up, hang him, shoot him, kill him, put him in an electric chair. But all that time that child was being beaten from K through high school in some cases, we said nothing. And it only mattered when they heard little Johnny, who lives under my roof. And that's really sad. I'm trying to find the information on a student who's a senior at the age of 18 who went to the police. He went to the school board. He went everywhere. An 18-year-old who was being beaten by his teacher in Pennsylvania, who ended up going and getting a gun finally and shot and killed his teacher. And he's in jail still to this day. But, it was okay for the teacher to use a deadly weapon called a wooden board.
Yeah,
but that kid couldn't use a gun. And now he's in jail, and that teacher has died. And it's like, okay, well, that's a separate issue. No, it's not. It's what we're allowing in our country. It's what we're allowing our children to face. And then when our little Johnny gets hurt, now we're up in arms about that person who hurt him. And if that person ends up in jail, that's like the end of the story. Well, what about your niece who lives over in Alabama, or your niece who lives in Colorado where they're still beating kids? Mm-hmm. What about them? We can do better than this. I mean, we have a federal bill to stop it in all of our states, all of our territories.
Yeah, let's talk about that.